Catalan separatist leaders walk free from jail. Spain's prime minister hopes the pardons will heal the wounds from the region's failed secession attempt 4 years ago. But could his decision backfire and cause more division? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. 9 politicians and activists convicted for trying to break the Catalonia region away from Spain are spending their first moments of freedom. They were jailed for up to 13 years for holding an illegal referendum in 2017. Spain's prime minister gave them a pardon on Tuesday. He hopes his gesture will foster a peaceful dialogue about Catalonia's future. But the leaders say they'll keep fighting for the region's secession. The pardon is deeply controversial. Opposition parties say they'll challenge it in court, as Sonia Gallego reports.
A tentative olive branch loaded with consequences. The Spanish Prime Minister has been pushing hard to revive talks with Catalan separatists and hoping that a pardon for the movement's 9 imprisoned leaders can open the way for dialogue.
El gobierno de España ha tomado esta decisión.
The Spanish government has taken this decision because it's the best for Catalonia, the best for Spain, and corresponds to the spirit of harmony and coexistence in the Spanish constitution.
It's not without opposition. Sanchez finds himself in the middle of a storm. Outside of Catalonia, it is deeply unpopular, with more than 60% of the country against the move. And parties from the centre to the hard right have capitalised on that discontent. For the pro-secessionist movement, the pardons do not go far enough. The Catalan leader said only an amnesty would be acceptable, as he echoed calls to continue the fight for independence.
Per això és l'hora de l'amnistia.
It's time for an amnesty and the right to self-determination. It's time to agree on a referendum. It's time for a solution to achieve more internal consensus.
The illegal independence referendum in 2017 triggered the biggest political crisis that the country had seen in decades. The 9 secessionist leaders were sentenced in 2019 for their roles in the vote, including Catalonia's vice premier. Spain's Supreme Court, which oversaw the trial, has also rejected the pardons, as it says those sentenced have shown no remorse. While the ruling is non-binding, it could be cited in possible future legal challenges in the Constitutional Court, which could send the 9 back to prison. The difficulty for the pro-secessionist argument is that while it is very vocal, it is still in the minority in Catalonia. Being part of Spain is still just about the preferred option there. Mr. Sanchez's dilemma is that he is leading a minority government and can ill afford to squander further support. In the parliament, he also needs the support of Catalan nationalist parties, and their leaders know that this peace offering won't be extended by the Prime Minister's opponents. It is an enormous gamble, yet those determined to move on say the pardons are the only way to repair the deep divisions that still linger between the two sides. Sonia Gallego, Al Jazeera.
All right, let's bring in our guests. In Barcelona, we are joined by Mar Aguilera Vaqués, professor of constitutional law at Barcelona University. In Madrid, Ruth Ferrero, lecturer in political science and senior researcher at Complutense University of Madrid. And in Brussels, Pieter Cleppe, an EU policy analyst and editor of BrusselsReport.eu. A warm welcome to you all. Mar, let me start with you today. Will these pardons, from your vantage point, help heal the wounds between Catalonia and the rest of Spain, or could they backfire and lead to deeper divisions going forward?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me here. In my opinion, this helps. Any step, of course, helps. Because these people have been in, these Catalan leaders, they have been in jail. And it's not only about them, it's about all the people that voted for them. And we even had the president of the Catalan parliament in jail. And this has been very shocking for the Catalan society. And this has been reflected in the last elections, where people kept voting voting for independentist parties. Of course, there are many other parties. There are many other opinions in Catalonia. Of course, there are. But this is a first step. But here in Catalonia, many people, what they want is amnesty, because a pardon is individual. And now, right now, 9 persons will be released. Whereas if there is an amnesty law, that means that the facts are clarified, and then more than 3,000 persons that are prosecuted in courts would be clarified. And then at the end, what would be very useful is an amendment of the criminal code to clarify the sedition crime and also some crimes that have to do with freedom of expression. And with this, we would linger with the rest of the European countries.
Ruth, let me ask you the same question. From your vantage point in Madrid, do these pardons help foster a moment where it could lead to a reconciliation of sorts between the central government and the Catalan nationalists?
Yes, I would think so. I think this is, is a starting point to carry on with a dialogue, a political dialogue among the parties, and I think it's absolutely necessary to go ahead. It's a legal issue. So let's sort that and start the political negotiations and dialogue. I think the Catalan society and the Spanish society already want to a way out of this situation of stagnation, and so I think we all want to move on this situation. So yes, I guess a pardon it's a first step, and we have to wait and see if we can proceed on the political negotiations and find a political solution for this issue.
Pieter, if we could just step back for a moment and look at the beginnings of this. I mean, the 2017 referendum, this created a huge political crisis. And while this crisis may have ebbed, in no way has it completely been resolved, has it?
Exactly. I think the Madrid government has not been properly engaging. It's indeed a first good step towards reconciliation between Barcelona and Madrid. Now, I mean, fundamentally, I think the independentists in Catalonia should understand that at least a large part of Catalan society does not want independence. And I think Madrid should accept that in Catalan society, there's a strong desire, a legitimate desire for more self-government. So it should be possible to find a middle ground. The obvious answer and model to look at is Switzerland, a country where the decentralized entities have a lot of competences, in particular tax competences. And if you look at Spain, there are the Basque country, and they have more tax powers at the moment than Catalonia. So perhaps that could be one way of trying to find each other, that Catalonia and perhaps all the regions in Spain receive the tax powers that the Basque country already has.
Mar, polls have shown that a majority of Spaniards were against granting these pardons. Now we've seen separatist leaders who were pardoned actually walk out of jail. How is that news being greeted?
Here in Catalonia, what I saw is that, as Peter just said, there is a large part of the society who wants at least a referendum. There is a large agreement on this. And of course, there are people who are not independentists, of course, and people who are, and people who want a consultation at least to see what people want, or at least go back to politics. And this first step, seeing all these politicians getting out of jail, has been a relief for us. But still, there are more than 3,000 persons that are still prosecuted. So that means that things are not easy. The challenge is still here. We need a response from politics, not from the judiciary, and specifically not from the criminal code, because many things that maybe should be fined or should have had a response The criminal response should be the last one. For instance, to call it sedition, what happened here in Catalonia, for me, this is, and for many, like European Council, Amnesty International, the UN, many institutions have said that this was disproportionate. And so seeing all these leaders getting out of jail has been very happy because, for instance, the president of the Parliament of Catalonia, this lady, she's a grandma and she's very popular, she's very well known. And for many Catalans, this has been very painful. Of course, for many Catalans too, was very painful to see such referendum because, of course, as Professor Ruth Ferrero has said, for many, this was painful to see that a part of the Catalan society wanted to be independent of Spain and they didn't want and they didn't trust this referendum. So it's because of this that reconciliation and to talk. And also when the president of Spain came to the Liceo Barcelona, the opera house of La Ramblas of Barcelona, and said, we Spanish love Catalans. This is the first time that we have seen this kind of seduction, and we would like to see more, actually.
Ruth, are political parties in Spain who've been opposed to the granting of the pardons, no matter where they might fall on the political spectrum, are these parties beginning to capitalize over the anger that's been expressed about the pardons?
Not at all. I mean, the right-wing parties have been trying to launch a campaign as it was the same in 2006 against the Catalonian Statute, but the support by the population has been diminished and they don't get what they were expected. As a matter of fact, what they are finding out is that they're losing support from civil society actors such as the church or the entrepreneurs or of course the ones who are usually support this position for the pardon. So I think it has been a good strategy by the government to get the support of not just the political parties that were supporting their government with the approval of the budget last year, but also getting some up other actors such the ones I just mentioned, the civil society support, which is essential to go further on this reconciliation and political dialogue process. So I think the opposition political forces are losing track and they are losing the argument. They have no legal arguments, they have no political arguments because pardons has been used since the beginning, I mean, since centuries ago, but also since the beginning of democracy in Spain by either governments or right-wing or left-wing. So has no legal argument, has no political argument, and also they are not saying the truth when they say they are negotiating with independentist Catalans because they need it by the governance of the country. Because, as I just said, the budget has been approved already, so they don't need the government does not need the support of these political parties. So I think they have to think about it and have a reflection on that position, on that I should say radical position against the pardons.
Pieter, from your perch in Brussels, how risky does all this look for Prime Minister Sanchez? How much of an impact politically could these pardons have on him going forward?
Well, he's trying to find the middle ground. He's between two sides, really, and that's why, indeed, he has not gone as far to declare amnesty, and also why he has waited in order to take this step. Then, of course, there's the right-wing opposition, and they are not very keen to, to accept any concessions. But that said, at some point there's going to be new elections in Spain, and if Sanchez wants to achieve something, he should not stop here by just, granting this freedom to these policymakers, to these politicians. He should officially engage and try to find a settlement with Catalonia and get it through. legally before the next elections, because indeed otherwise some people that are more hardline on the Catalan issue may come to power, and then it may become even harder to find a settlement. Now, that said, I don't have the impression that Mr. Sanchez is courageous enough to go there, but we will see.
Mar, where do things stand exactly in Catalonia when it comes to the separatist movement right now? I mean, since 2017, has momentum for this movement ebbed? Has it slowed?
Well, it's difficult to say because in the last elections, it didn't go down. But the thing is that it was in the middle of COVID, so participation was lower. So it was said that, look, from the independentist side, it was said, look, the movement is going up and up. Whereas from Spain, it was said, well, but not many people went to vote. But this doesn't mean anything because we don't know what we're going to vote, the ones staying at home. So if we look at the last elections, the independentist movement has not stopped. But I think many people would like to see politics back. I think many people are tired of all this judicialization of the process. And so far, we didn't see any response from the Spanish state, so in the previous government. So right now, at least Pedro Sanchez government is trying some steps. And of course, it's criticized by both sides, from the hardcore of both sides, like from the ones that want the unity of Spain, that they don't want to talk at all, and the ones in Catalonia that want to go straight away towards independence. But most of the people, I think, is in the middle. And steps such these ones, or if we would amend the criminal code, if we would talk about the Spanish judiciary, because if we talk about transitional justice, when you go from a dictatorship into a democracy, there are some steps, some international standards that has to be taken. And some of them were not taken in Spain. So we are in a situation sometimes that has to do with this moralic transition we had in Spain, but maybe we need another transition to enforce our democracy. We need to talk more about inclusivity, about this Swiss model maybe would be a response, or many other factors and tools that could increase and ameliorate the Spanish democracy.
Ruth, you know, critics of Prime Minister Sanchez accuse him of abandoning his previous positions on this issue. They say that before that he had stated publicly that he was against giving out pardons to these separatist leaders, and that essentially he's only doing this now because he needs support and his party needs support from Catalan nationalist parties in order to pass laws in Parliament. What do you say? Is that a valid criticism? I mean, would the Prime Minister have done this if he did not need that support?
I just mentioned that in my previous intervention that this sentence is not true. I mean, the main law that has been passed on the its legislature, it should be the budget, and it has been passed already. So that's not true. That the government needs the support of the Catalans, Catalan political parties. Saying that, I should say that I think the Socialist Party has always been pro-political dialogue. We have to remind here that the most conflicted governments between, or the most conflicted relation has been between the Catalan government in 2006-07. And especially later on with the referendum, when the Popular Party was on government, in a central government in Madrid. So when the radicals govern in both sides, more radicalism appears either in Catalonia or in the rest of the country. So I think this is a good thing. These pardons, I not quite agree with my previous colleague, not Mar, the one in Brussels, when he said that Sanchez has no enough bravery to face it. I think we have 2 years ahead to carry on the political dialogue. And I think if the socialist government fails, would be not because of these pardons, but by other stuff like management, the social crisis that we're facing, even though, or how they manage the funds coming from Europe, but not because of the pardons. And I think we are on the right track to sort out this political conflict, which has been stagnated for so long by now. Thank you.
Pieter, so we know that the leaders who were pardoned, they're not going to be able to hold political office for some time or run for office. But apparently these pardons are also conditional on these leaders not committing serious crimes for a certain amount of time. When we're talking about crimes, what do you think that means? I mean, what could encompass a crime? What could land one of these leaders who's been pardoned, back in a courtroom or back in jail going forward?
Well, indeed, as you say, it all looks very shaky and dependent on the goodwill of Madrid. We would have to see legally how permanent it is, how solid it is, that like a future government could not revoke this. Also, it's clear that people like Carlos Puigdemont, who is currently in Belgium, it's not clear at all that he can go back to Spain, because indeed there has not been a formal amnesty. I mean, part of the problem is also that the Spanish government, or I should perhaps say the judiciary, has been using definitions of crime and that are not necessarily considered a crime in other European countries, which is an element that has complicated attempts by the Spanish judiciary to ask for extradition, for example, from Belgium. Some Belgian judges have blocked this extradition. Also now the European Court of Justice has overruled the report that served as the legal basis to take the immunity from Catalan MEPs. So I think a lot of the legal basis that is being used to go after the initiators of this referendum is quite questionable. You also see examples of public officials in Catalonia that are facing legal consequences, even if they were merely doing their job as bureaucrats really, and had no political role whatsoever. So I think a lot of it is very questionable so far, and this also should raise some doubts on how solid these pardons will actually be in practice.
Pieter just then mentioned how it's sort of unclear where all this might leave Mr. Puigdemont going forward. I want to ask you a little bit more about that. I mean, could what's happened with these pardons, and if there is a reconciliation or a dialogue going forward, could that in any way open the door for Mr. Puigdemont, who is in self-imposed exile, to come back in some capacity, or perhaps even be granted a pardon or clemency of some type?
As it has just been said, the situation is that many crimes that are a crime in Spain, according to our criminal code, or at least are not clear enough, like sedition, like criticizing the King of Spain, or an attack to religion. They are not in line with other criminal codes in Europe. And this is what the European Court of Human Rights have been saying all these years. So that means that if President Carlos Puigdemont, he wants to come, he can go around all Europe because he is a European MP. But so far, from the judiciary in Spain, it has been said that if he comes to Spain, he would be arrested. So things should be changed, because if not, we have the situation that the ones that stay here, that for many, it has been seen as more honest, the fact that they stayed, that they went through court, and the ones would be in the street, whereas the president Puigdemont, who is in exile, if he comes back, he could be arrested and also prosecuted, and after the prosecution, he would be released. But first, all these leaders were in preventive prison for many months in Madrid. And they are from Barcelona. They normally speak Catalan. They could not defend themselves in their own language.
All right, well, we have run out of time, so we're going to have to leave the conversation there. Thanks so much to all of our guests, Mar Aguilera Vaqués, Ruth Ferrero, and Pieter Cleppe. And thank you, too, for watching. You can see this and all of our previous programs again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. For me, Mohammed, Jamjoom, and the whole team here, bye for now.